Welcome to ABC24 This Week. I'm Richard Ransom along with ABC24 Political Analyst Otis Sanford. Here's what's on our plate for today as we give you the real story behind the big stories. We're sorry. MLGW apologizes for the ice storm mess that took 12 days to fully restore power to its customers. It says lessons were learned, but the mayor seems less convinced, floating the idea of selling the utility. Lessons in education when it comes to teaching our kids issues of race, gender, and religion, all playing a role in various ways this week. We'll talk more about that. And one more year, the Southern Heritage Classic is one of the biggest sporting events in Memphis all year long. This week, Jackson State has a change of heart about pulling out of the annual football game. We'll delve into that as well. First, let me introduce my panel. In addition to Otis, we have political consultant Tawan Stout-Mitchell, former Memphis City Councilwoman, and Brad Broders, ABC24 reporter, to talk about all these issues and more. Let's get started with MLGW. First of all, y'all got your power back on, I hope, by now? I don't want to be too optimistic.
I never lost mine, so thank goodness.
Look, JT Young, the president and CEO of MLGW, honestly a little bit contrite this past week, going before City Council and apologizing for the mess and how long it took to get those 140,000 customers back online. Let's listen to that apology that he made earlier this week.
We didn't meet the expectations that our customers had, and that is not how we want to be. And as we move forward, we want to make sure that we're better. We have a mission of safely delivering services that improve customer experiences, and we want to make sure we do that. We want to nail that. And we know we didn't in this storm, so we know we can get better, and we're going to get better.
So toward that goal, we've learned that there has been the formation of an outage advisory group. They want better estimates of how long it's going to take people to get their power back on. They want to maybe stage crews in advance in a better way of approaching storm. They want a better informed customer care team so that when people call and they need assistance, the customer care team will giving them the right answers, which wasn't always the case, and maybe tweak their damage assessment strategy as well, were some of the main things that they say are goals. Brad, I'll start with you on this. Do you think that's enough for customers and what they're dealing with their frustrations from all of this?
Well, you know, I covered that meeting and that soundbite you just heard from. I asked JT Young that very question. The question will be is the timing of this. You know, the outage advisory committee hopes to be formed by March, hopes to have final recommendations by June. You know, tweaks can be made, and they did express many lessons learned, a couple of others than you had just mentioned. The big question is going to be, though, the major things remain and the major challenges remain, namely a lot of large trees and the acknowledgement not enough tree trimmings being done, and 60% of MLGW lines above ground. So going into the summer with potential volatile thunderstorms and windstorms, you're potentially going to still have the same problem with Mother Nature meeting aging infrastructure. So while there could be some changes specifically made maybe more at the margins, those major hurdles remain.
In fact, we saw that this past week. You know, we're just past the ice storm, and then we had some major rain and wind that came through midweek, and we had thousands of people again without power. Tawan, what are you hearing from your folks? What your friends and family and all of them who had to deal with these power outages? Awfully frustrating, as we know, and do they feel like MLGW is doing what it should?
Well, I really want to say, first of all, that I salute the CEO for being straightforward and honest about there were some problems. It takes real leadership to acknowledge that you made some major mistakes and you've got some correction to do. I did hear the mayor, too, acknowledge the same thing, and that was good to hear it from both perspectives. I wish I had heard more talk about our aging infrastructure, because it was that, the trees, and underground wiring, all three factors. And the fact that the aging infrastructure was presented to us as a community about 2 years ago, and we failed to adopt the 5-year plan that the CEO presented to this community is a problem.
Yeah.
And people are frustrated, but I think it's like anything else. You want to spend your money where it matters. And in a household, I am not going to build a pool in the back of my yard if my house needs a roof.
Right. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people, though, would put the pool in before the roof. It's hard to spend money on things like tires and mattresses and things that we all need in life, but nonetheless, you got to do. Otis, so one of the things that was floated by Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland this week was maybe it's time to look again at selling MLGW to a private company. Maybe the profits from that could be used to help with this major infrastructure problem that we have right now. But then he kind of also talked out of both sides of his mouth and said, I'm not saying we really need to sell it, but I'm just want to float the idea.
Well, exactly, and right, he brought it up, and then he backtracked a little by saying, I'm not proposing that we do sell it. But you put it out there, and nobody had put it out there in this iteration except you. So if we're going to talk about it, then you put it out there, lead the conversation, Richard, because the conversation does need to be had about, putting all of this utility on the ground. I look at this two ways. I look at it from the standpoint of, we are a microwave society, and so we expect everything to be done right away. We get impatient when our computers don't boot up on time. We get impatient when our gas pumps are slow. And so there's a natural amount of impatience having to wait certainly 12 days to get your power back on. But having said that, in 2022, most MLGW customers, most everybody believe that we should have, to Juan's point, we should have had the infrastructure problems resolved in a technological way that we wouldn't have to wait 12 days no matter where you live in this community. So that is a natural complaint that people should have. I am glad to see JT Young show some contrition there, but we have to do more than just form committees here. We need to make sure that we are moving in a very quick way to make sure that this kind of lengthy outages don't happen in the future.
Well, MLGW has proven they're very good at forming committees. I mean, that they got down. They got that down good. But we need to talk more about this notion of selling the utility. I'll throw this open out to all of you. Why do you think the mayor did that? Who wants to take that? Why do it if he's not really serious about it?
Well, Richard, if I could take that one first. I mean, he did, and I know he sent that out in his weekly update on an email last Friday. I covered the Fraser Exchange Club meeting on Thursday where he was the weekly guest. And like Otis was saying, kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth, acknowledging that we should put it out there. I'm not advocating for it, but I'm floating it. I think he did talk about, though, he's lived in this community for decades, and he's old enough to remember, as many longtime Memphians are, about the 1994 the ice storm there, crippling for weeks of power outages as well. Thinking just big picture of here we are nearly 3 decades later, a quarter, half an inch of ice can knock people out for weeks. Certainly, we keep talking about it, but nothing substantially gets done. And kind of following up with Tawana and what Otis were saying, communication was a major problem. You heard it repeatedly from customers. I spoke with one customer on Monday when it was only down to about 600 people without power. He was still waiting on it. And his complaint was, I'm calling the crews. There's no coordination. There's no record of a log of crew A came and saw this to pass to crew B to pass to crew C. So with a customer care team, I think that's going to be a major thing that they hopefully can do some substantial work in the meantime of improving the operators, online, database, et cetera, because that was clearly lacking in this storm.
And unfortunately, Richard, we rely on technology so much that we fail sometimes to look at the population we're trying to share this technology with. We have an aging community. We have a community that may be without the technology or savvy to access that. You still have to realize you have seniors. You have to rely on some bodies to answer a phone call and have a person direct and give them information. And that was sorely missing in this fiasco as well. I do want to say, though, that I waited 7 days but I had a family member who waited 9 days. When you look at the same storm and the impact of that storm to other communities within the area, it did not take them as long, percentage-wise, with the number of disconnect as it did us. And we should be asking why.
Yeah, and to Richard, to your point about, why bring up now selling MLGW if you're not going to carry the conversation further? The mayor should carry the conversation further. Back in the late 1990s, then Mayor Willie Harrington raised the idea of selling MLGW, and he got hammered for it because people said, no, this is our utility, this is a public utility, I don't want to sell it, and Dr. Harrington had to back off on it. I'm not totally sure that that's the same sentiment today. But again, I don't know exactly why he brought it up, but since he did bring it up, we need to carry it a little bit further. As mayor, he needs to lead that conversation.
Does he perhaps, does it lend credibility to the argument, you guys, of all right, maybe we don't want to sell it, but maybe we do want to take seriously this issue of having someone else provide our electricity besides TVA, so we can take advantage of that savings and maybe help the infrastructure that way? Is that a possibility?
I think he brought it up out of frustration, and he's probably heard some people say that to him. And so he wanted to float the balloon for discussion, and that's okay. But and I know that that is a political lightning bug. Mm-hmm. And in the end, I don't know if you can get your community around voting for something like that, because it essentially means your public utility system that is owned by your citizens will now be privatized, which may mean more money when you sell it, but higher prices when you go through the process of privatizing.
And no oversight. And
that's a whole can of worms that I don't know if we have the answer to. Right. But if you want somebody to look into it, so be it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got to leave it there. Got a lot to get to in this program still. When we come back, several developments when it comes to your kids' education in a moment.